Michelle Kristen Anderson. Michelle Anderson isn't innocent either. She collaborated with Joseph and, with the help of a firearm, killed some of her very own family members. The carnage they wrought made headlines and was called the Carnation Murders. McEnroe and his girlfriend Michelle Anderson had serious beef with her family. They had been living on her family's property and were unhappy with their treatment. So, what did they do? They planned a little Christmas surprise for the family, which wasn't good. McEnroe and Anderson planned and killed 6 family members, including Michelle's parents, brother, sister-in-law, and their 2 young children who were less than 6 years old. It was one of the deadliest mass shootings in Washington state history and shocked the nation. The bodies were discovered 2 days later, when a co-worker of one of the family came to check why they had not been at work. She saw the bodies through the window and called the police.
911?
There's been a murder. There's 3 people dead that I can see right now.
Inside?
I just came up. She works with me.
Inside the house?
Yes.
What do you see?
There's a baby and a man and a woman, and she's my best friend.
With the arrival of the police and investigations, Joseph and his girlfriend were arrested. To avoid the death penalty, they confessed to the crime. They were charged with 6 counts of aggravated first-degree murder. During the trial, Joseph became emotional and started crying when asked to tell the court what he did.
Then she wasn't moving anymore, and so I went over by where she was and I told her that I was sorry, and I shot her in the head.
The 16-man jury found them guilty. Joseph was convicted of 6 counts of aggravated murder and sentenced to 6 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Anderson received the same punishment. Joseph's actions were horrible, and a few tears would not bring back the dead or convince anyone that he wasn't evil. However, as much as Joseph cried, it didn't match the amount of tears Jaleel Smith Riley, another killer, cried during trial.
Sorry. Go back over. I'm so sorry.
This is Jaleel Markeith Smith Riley. 23-year-old Jaleel was a young man living in Cincinnati, Ohio, who got mixed up with the wrong crowd. Jaleel planned with 2 other guys to steal a car, but this is where everything went wrong. In November 2013, Portia Brooks and her boyfriend, Aaron Martin, were inside a car, whispering sweet nonsense as lovers do, when Jaleel knocked on the car's window with a gun. Jaleel pushed the frightened boyfriend out of the car, searched, and shot him in the head. He then leaned in and shot Portia twice. Portia was taken to the hospital later, but didn't make it and died 3 days later. Luckily, Martin survived, but sustained serious brain damage. Jaleel and his accomplices, 23-year-old Josiah Fusay and Randall Bird, escaped. Still, through police investigation, they were apprehended years later. Jaleel was charged with aggravated murder and attempted murder. During the trial, Portia's mom, Sharon, brought a box containing her daughter's remains to the court. She read an emotional statement about the magnitude of loss she has to deal with because of Jaleel's greed.
This is what I have left because of his greed, his selfishness, his complete disregard of and disrespect of others and life.
Portia's sister, in her statement, insisted on Jaleel serving the maximum sentence.
I have to deal with life without Portia, so he should deal with life without parole.
When it was Jaleel's turn to address the court, he pleaded for parole. He cried and claimed he had learned his lesson.
Sorry. Go back over. I'm so sorry.
If his pleas moved the judge, the victim impact statement from the victim's family ensured that he served the maximum sentence.
Or defendant serve a term of life without parole. As to count 4, for the offense of attempted murder.
When he heard this sentence, he slumped to the floor crying. Jaleel may truly feel sorry for his crimes, but like all killers, his actions must have consequences, even if he cries the judge down a river. This was the thinking behind the sentencing of Antonio Barbo. This is Antonio Barbo. Antonio may look young and playful, but his crime wasn't a joke. The 14-year-old collaborated with his friend, 14-year-old Nathan Papp, to steal money from his great-grandparents' house. It would have been understandable if they needed the money for an emergency. Still, these teenagers stole money to buy pizza and marijuana. Admittedly, stealing is bad, but Antonio and Nathan did not stop at only stealing. Antonio's great-grandmother Barbara Olson was in the house at the time. Rather than threatening violence in return for money, they resorted right to violence, quickly, and not just with the two teenagers' hands, but with the help of a hatchet they found lying around the house. Because the teenagers wanted some pizza and weed, Barbara Olson would be found later in a pool of blood as a result of a hatchet.
She started heading into the living room, falling.
And as she was falling, were there any more blows? Did you strike her again?
I hit one more time as she was falling.
The Boyds were arrested and charged with first-degree intentional homicide. Although they were minors, the severity of their crimes meant that they were tried in an adult court. In court, the medical examiner testified that Barbara Olson was not only struck once or twice by the hatchet, but more than 15 times, the majority of the attack being above her neck. What happened in court was shocking. Antonio's family pointed out that he suffered an accident when he was younger, affecting his cognitive abilities. They brought a psychiatrist who testified that a car accident at 10 years old had affected Antonio, making it easy for him to be deceived by his accomplice, Nathan. During his testimony, Antonio also disclosed that Nathan struck his great-grandmother 3 to 4 times during the attack. To make things worse, he revealed that they tried unsuccessfully to put her body in the car's trunk before abandoning it and covering it up in the garage, where it would later be found. Antonio also read an emotional apology, but couldn't complete it as he broke down crying.
No, I don't show my emotions much. I myself am not sure why. But that doesn't mean I don't.
His lawyer finished the statement for him amidst tears. In the end, Antonio was sentenced to life imprisonment, but would be eligible for parole after 36 years. By then, he would be 50. Nathan Papp was also found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, but will be eligible for parole after 31 years. Antonio's crimes were horrible, but the tears during trial made the whole process sad. This was because he seemed to be really remorseful, almost as remorseful as Ashford Thompson.
I just want to say I'm sorry. I can't apologize enough. Straight face is not because I just have no feeling or I just hate people. I'm just some kind of cold-blooded killer. I wasn't raised like that.
This is 23-year-old Ashford Thompson. Thompson is in court for the murder of Twinsburg Police Department Officer Joshua Mictarian. In 2010, Thompson took the life of Officer Joshua during a routine traffic stop. Joshua had pulled over Ashford L. Thompson, who was driving into the driveway of his former home with loud music blaring from his car. Mictarian called for backup, but Thompson did not like that. The 23-year-old reached for his firearm and pulled the trigger not once or twice, but 4 times. Officer Joshua was unrecognizable by the time backup had arrived. The incident took the officer's life on the spot. At the time of the shooting, Mictarian's canine, Baggio, was barking in the police cruiser. The scene was chaotic as the dispatcher relayed that Thompson had a license to carry a concealed handgun, but Mictarian never answered. A few minutes later, a 911 caller reported popping sounds that sounded like shots fired. Little did this caller know, they had just witnessed a community's keeper of peace's life being wrongfully taken. When police officers arrived at the scene, they found Mictarian on the ground. But this is where the 23-year-old showed his lack of intelligence. The officer was found with Thompson's driver's license and insurance card in his front shirt pocket. Mictarian had managed to get one handcuff on Thompson's wrist before he lost his life. Thompson had fled the scene, but was later found at his sister's house with Mictarian's handcuffs attached to one wrist and a gun on the stove. This is where things get emotional. Mictarian's death was a tragedy for his family, including his wife, Holly, an Oakwood police officer at the time, and their daughter, Taya. Mictarian had served with the Twinsburg Police Department for 11 years and was also a part-time officer with the Uniontown Police Department. He was a well-respected community member and a Talmadge High School graduate. During the trial, Thompson felt that he would get the death penalty and often cried, saying there was no point in the trial. He also begged for forgiveness, crying. That didn't seem to help his case.
I just want to say I'm sorry. I can't apologize enough. Straight face is not because I just have no feeling or I just hate people. I'm just some kind of cold-blooded killer. I wasn't raised like that.
After a long and grueling trial, Thompson was convicted of aggravated murder, escape, resisting arrest, tampering with evidence, and carrying a concealed weapon. The jury recommended a death sentence handed down by Summit County Common Pleas Court Judge Eleanor Marsh Stormer on June 23, 2010. Thompson appealed his conviction and death sentence directly to the Ohio Supreme Court, but was denied. He has been in prison since June 25, 2010, waiting for his day for the Grim Reaper to tap him on the shoulder and tell him his time is up. Ashford should have thought about the punishment before committing the crime. Whether his cries were genuine or not, he deserved the punishment. But it gets worse from here.
At 16, you knew not to keep pounding your fist on that pillow with that little baby's head there.
This is Dylan Schumacher. Dylan Schumacher was just 17 years old when he was convicted for the murder of 3-month-old Austin. Dylan was supposed to babysit the toddler. Instead, Dylan found himself guilty of being the sole reason for the toddler's passing. Dylan was arrested for child abuse charges, as well as murder. During the trial, Dylan appeared to show remorse and was wailing in court, saying he was sorry. While some of you might buy these begs for forgiveness, he didn't fool the judge.
Trying to do something that my father never did and be there. Ashley, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you, son. And you know I didn't mean to hurt you. You just can't accept that. Because you know me. You've known me for 5 years. I never would have wanted to hurt Austin.
While in the cell, Dylan bragged on his phone that all he had to do was cry, and the judge would pity him and not give him the maximum sentence.
Will show that you admitted on July 23, 2013, in a phone call to your mother from the holding center, you stated, and I got a quote from the court reporter, "I am a 16-year-old blonde. Probably all I have to do is cry in front of the jury, and they're going to feel sorry for me," end quote.
The judge cautioned him for his lack of remorse